Hello, everyone, and welcome to Joker Last Laugh Part 2, the massive crossover event that we covered the first half of last week. This week we're covering the second half, the rest of the tie-ins, finishing off the event. If you haven't checked out last week's video, then I definitely recommend checking it out because we're going to be starting right in the middle of the event and things might be confusing. Yeah, before we get into this, please like and subscribe and comment below, about the event and any other things that you might want me to read, because I'll consider things. There are things, like, I've already planned out a lot of stuff that I'm going to be doing for this channel, but I might take some recommendations or any suggestions, and think about possibly doing them in the future. So, without further ado, let's get straight back into this. Today we are beginning. The first issue we are beginning with is Harley Quinn issue 13, the Joker Last Laugh tie-in. It's written by Carl Kessel, with art by Pete Woods and Mark Lipka, and this tie-in goes completely against everything that was ever previously established in the event up until this point. Nothing that happens in this makes any sense to what Harley Quinn is currently doing in the event. They just don't cross over at all. It goes completely against everything. I don't know how they dropped the ball so hard with this one, where it was like, they just did not even bother reading the event and trying to at least line them up. It was kind of like they were just doing what they wanted to do and then half-assing the connection to the event. Because as we know, at the moment, in Joker's Last Laugh, the Joker is trying to capture Harley Quinn so that he can force her to have his baby. It's really messed up. He can force her to have his baby so that he will have an heir, because he's going to die soon and he wants somebody to continue on his legacy. So he wants to have a child, and the only person he's willing to have a child with is Harley. But Harley doesn't want a child, especially from someone that she's not even married to. And so he sends a bunch of Jokerized villains after her in order to capture her by force. But she was saved by Batgirl and Spoiler and Power Girl, and they took her to Star Labs to work with Kirk Langstrom, who is trying to create a cure for the Jokerized villains, and they need Harley Quinn's help for that because she has the same chemicals as the Joker in her bloodstream. So they believe that maybe her blood might be the trick to making a cure. So right now, within continuity of the event, Harley Quinn is with Kirk Langstrom at Star Labs. But in this tie-in, she's not at Star Labs. She's not with Kirk Langstrom. It acts as if none of that has even happened. And instead, Harley Quinn has a motorcycle, which is a Harley Davidson, obviously, and she wants to run away with Poison Ivy because they're both really close friends. This is before DC would ever establish any kind of relationship between them. Right now, they are just fully platonic. And Harley wants to go away with Poison Ivy and go on a road trip and just leave. But Poison Ivy doesn't want to leave because she has roots in Gotham City. Get it? Because she's all about plants. She actually says that in the issue. It's kind of a funny line. So she doesn't want to leave, but Harley wants her to leave, and Harley wants to leave. And so there's this bit of dilemma, and Harley's just like, well, I guess the truth is that you just don't want friends. I want friends, and it's clear that you don't want friends. So I guess that's it. I guess we'll go our separate ways. And so she leaves. And meanwhile, there's this couple who are both astronauts. Their names are Rick Jensen and Lana Jensen. And this is their first appearance, but it's later established that these two characters have alter egos or alternate personalities that are known as Lady Luna and Moonrock. And these alternate personalities were created from radiation in space, because they traveled to the moon and the radiation turned them into these creatures. It's stated that this is a thing that has been going on for a long time, but at the beginning of the issue, I don't know, like, I guess the idea is that Star Labs sent them out into space to go to the moon so that they would transform on purpose, because Star Labs knew that this couple turned into these monsters. And then they activated a force field after they transformed to try and keep them contained in the spaceship. So I guess it was all planned. It's kind of confusing, being this their first appearance. But while they're trapped on the ship in their monstrous forms, they are, like, the Joker appears towards, like, in front of them. Like, he appears on their screen, which is another rule broken for the event. One of the rules was don't use the Joker in your tie-in, and almost everyone has broken that rule. It's actually insane how, like, they had one simple rule, like, they had a couple of simple rules. One of them was don't use the Joker, and almost every single writer has used the Joker in their tie-in, because the reason why they don't want people using the Joker is because he's busy, and it will break continuity if you have him doing too many different things that go against what he's currently doing. And that's what happens in this one. The Joker appears to them and asks them to go and kill Harley Quinn, which makes no sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense for the Joker to ask them to do that, because it goes completely against his plans in the main event, which is that he wants Harley Quinn to be captured so that she can have his child, not kill her. But that's what their role in the story is that Moonrock and Lady Luna get sent after Harley Quinn to kill her. They come into contact with her. Also, off-panel, Joker gives them his Joker toxin at some point, so they do become, like, Jokerized. They don't look Jokerized, but they're acting crazier because they're on Joker toxin. It just seems like it's kind of like a half-assed way of incorporating the Joker toxin, of being like, oh no, they took it. They look exactly the same, but they're on it. Like, they're crazy. They're on Joker toxin. You just can't tell, because we did this, like, last minute. So they go after Harley. They destroy her Harley Davidson, and they get into a big fight with her. And Harley manages to, like, barely get away from them. She runs back to Poison Ivy's. Ivy is like, wow, you're back. And Harley's like, yeah, I'm being chased down by these two maniacs who are trying to kill me. And what she does at Ivy's is Harley is just like, oh, maybe my blood can cure these two because they have Joker toxin in them. So maybe if I inject them with my blood somehow, it might cure them. Like, she just comes up with that. I guess because she is very smart, so she would figure that out. But it still goes against, like, what is currently going on, which is she's not supposed to do this until she's with Kirk Langstrom, but whatever. She draws some of her own blood, she puts it into a tomato, which she throws at Moonrock, and he eats the tomato, and then the Joker toxin turns him human again. And then the sun comes out, and the idea is that they turn back into their human forms when the sun comes out. So Lady Luna turns back into her human form when the sun comes out. And so they think that they might be cured, or that her husband is cured. But then he suddenly transforms back into Moonrock, and it turns out that the blood from Harley Quinn that was injected into him has changed him, so now, instead of becoming Moonrock at night alongside Lady Luna, he now becomes Moonrock in the day, and then he becomes human at night. And Lady Luna becomes Lady Luna at night and human in the day. So they can never be human together anymore. One of them's always stuck as a monster in the one of them's always going to be a monster and the other one's always going to be human. And they get really mad at Harley because they're like, you just ruined our relationship because I'm always going to be human when he's a monster and he's always going to be a monster when I'm human. Like, you've ruined everything. But Moonrock and Moonrock is like, but we can make it work. And so he like grabs Lady Luna and they get out of there. They get out and they run away to continue being criminals and to try and figure out a new dynamic to their relationship. And it's after they leave that Ivy reveals to Harley that she doesn't want Harley to leave. And that's her problem that she's having. She doesn't want Harley to leave. But she knows Harley wants to leave. Because Harley's like, well, then I'll stay. And Ivy's like, no, I know you want to leave, so you should leave. And then Harley's like, let's just both go. Let's just get out of here. We'll go on a road trip. And we'll have some fun. And Ivy finally agrees to go with her. And it ends on the sneak peek at the next issue, which is that Harley and Ivy are going to begin their road trip starting in Metropolis. And which, again, it's assuming that they're about to go on the road trip right away. But considering that this takes place in the middle of the event, Harley still needs to go to Star Labs and help Kirk Langstrom make a cure. So, like I said, this issue just went completely against everything, broke complete continuity of the event. Probably the most egregious way that any writer has done so. But yeah, that was that tie-in. Overall, as an issue of Harley Quinn, it was pretty good. I enjoyed reading it, but as a tie-in, it was awful because of the continuity errors and the fact that it broke it in every way possible. Like, in every single way that you could possibly think of it going against the event, it did. It's almost like they did it on purpose, where they were like, let's just, like, go as far against this as possible and make this as disconnected to the event as we possibly can. So, the next time we're going to be talking about is The Spectre, Issue 10, The Return of Parallax. Written by J.M. DeMatteis, with art by Craig Hamilton, Ray Snyder, and Jim Royal. This is a great tie-in, because it doesn't break continuity. Like, it has the Joker in it, but it uses him in a way that at least doesn't break the continuity of the Joker's Last Laugh event, and you can kind of be like, well, that probably happened. Like, that could make sense. It also furthers Hal Jordan's character development, using the Joker toxin stuff involved with Parallax, because, as you can probably guess, Parallax is the villain that gets Jokerized. If you don't know who Parallax is, I highly recommend checking out my 0 Hour video that I did that covers the entire event that revolves heavily around Parallax as a character. He's essentially Hal Jordan when he became evil. His mind became broken, he killed all the lanterns, and became Parallax after stealing all the power from the power battery. Eventually he tried to recreate the universe, the heroes all stopped him, and then he eventually sacrificed himself when the sun was being destroyed. And after being sacrificed, after sacrificing himself, Hal Jordan would eventually become the new Spectre, which you can find out more about that in the other video I've done, which is Judgment Day, or Day of Judgment, sorry. That's all about that. But Hal Jordan is currently the Spectre, and as the Spectre, he gets help from the ghost of Abin Sur, that's kind of like his partner in this whole endeavor. His goal is to make up for all the bad things that he did as Parallax by becoming the Spirit of Vengeance, but he's trying to deter the Spirit away from vengeance and instead deal with things in a more heroic manner that doesn't involve killing people or damning them to eternity unless they really deserve it. So what's most recently happened is that Hal's brother and his brother's wife, his sister-in-law, were both killed. They're both dead in a tragic event that happened. I think it was just a car crash that they just ended up in. Um, Eventually, he was able to help them move on so that they could be with God. But they had a daughter, well, they have a daughter, whose name is Helen. So she no longer has any parents, so Hal is taking it upon himself to become her adopted father now. Because he's all she has left. And he'd previously learnt that her future was going to end with her dying to, like, drug overdose. So he's doing everything he can to make sure that her life doesn't go in that direction. And Abin Sur is helping him with that as well. But Hal doesn't really see himself as being worthy of being a father figure for her because of all the terrible things that he's done. So he's still battling with his feelings over whether or not he can look after Helen. So he's kind of keeping his distance from her, which is making her upset because she's still trying to deal with the fact that her parents are dead. And that's when... Because at the beginning of this, it begins with Parallax, Jokerized Parallax, holding the head of Spectre, kind of like Shakespeare, and then he throws Spectre's head across the universe to the ends of the universe. And then it's kind of like, how did we get here? Well, let's go back and find out how we got into this situation. And so, while Hal leaves Helen and Abin Sur to spend time together, Helen begins crying into Abin Sur's shoulder over her parents. Hal suddenly feels a weird force in the universe as the Joker's toxins enter his system. Like he senses these Joker toxins being spread throughout the universe, changing villains into Jokerized versions. And so he goes to find the Joker to see that if he can stop it personally. And J.M. DeMatteis has been keeping up with the event because he makes sure that the Joker is on the Easter Islands, which is where he is currently. So Spectre goes to the Easter Islands where the Joker is, where the Joker's talking about like how he needs to do something so bad, so huge, because he's going to die. And while he's thinking about what he's going to do, the Spectre appears behind him, enters his brain to see if he can break the connection between Joker and all of his Jokerized villains. But in doing so, he gets infected by the Joker's mind, which sends him flying outward. He's just like, ah, as he gets, as he draws the Joker's energies. And yeah, it just sends him flying. And the Joker's like, oh, what was that? What the hell was in this pina colada mix? And so, and also all that's left is Spectre's boots, which is really funny. It's just like smoking. A nice little way of adding some humor to this, because obviously it's a tie-in, so J.M. DeMatteis adds a little bit of Joker humor. And yeah, I like this way of tying it in because it doesn't break continuity. It's very easy for them to be like, well, maybe the Spectre did try and fail to stop the Joker, As long as the Joker remains on Easter Island and it doesn't change his plans in any way, I think it works. I think it works completely fine. So Spectre gets sent flying to the moon, where he coughs up a bunch of disgusting green slime, which is the Joker's toxin in physical form, manifesting itself as a copy of Parallax. So Spectre leaves, and this slime manifests itself as Parallax, the Parallax that was within Hal, except now he's Jokerized, because the Joker toxins have mixed with it and created this abomination. And so he appears to Hal and basically says to Hal that he is going to make Hal's life a living nightmare and prove that he is better than Hal, and that Hal is trying to be this goody two-shoes as the Spectre, and that Spectre's going to try, and that Parallax is going to try and show his true colors and be like, this is who you are, and this is who you've always been, and I'm going to show you the kind of fun that we can have, and the reasons why you should have stayed as Parallax. And so Spectre tries to absorb Parallax immediately. He's just like, I'm just going to try and absorb you because you deserve to be kept within inside me and not as a physical being. And then it doesn't work. Parallax just immediately bursts out of Spectre's chest, out of Hal's chest, and just leaves. And doing so hurt Hal a lot, like hurt his Spectre form quite a lot. So he's left kind of like wounded. And so what Parallax does is he wants to torture and eventually kill everyone that Hal loves. So he kidnaps Helen and, starts, he transforms her into a little puppet that he can puppeteer around and be really cruel with. And Abensur is just like, you're not going to hurt her. No, I swear that I have the power to stop you. And so, like, he covers Helen in, like, a little green bubble to keep her away from Parallax. And Parallax is like, oh no, please, Mr. Dead Green Lantern, sir, don't harm me. I promise I'll be good. I won't bother the little girl or take over all creation, and I swear I'll return all my overdue library books. Of course, I'm a terrible liar. And then he creates a giant fly swat and just swats Abensur's ghost, squashing him. And that's when Hal shows up. Hal is the Spectre in cowboy garb, and he steps on Parallax and is like, you were saying I needed to grow against a sense of humor. So here I am. You kept calling me cowboy and sheriff, so here I am as a cowboy / sheriff. You get it? And Parallax is like, I get it, as he's like underneath his boot. So he springs outside of Spectre's boot and is like, but you're not gonna be able to stop me from executing young Helen, because I know that that's what's going to get on your nerves the most, is if I torture this little girl. And so Helen is in a guillotine, and Hal's just like, you wouldn't. And he's like, of course I would. I'm the part of you that has no conscience, no regrets. And so it's Marie Antoinette time for the kid, unless you surrender to me here and now. And Hal's like, alright, I surrender, but you promise to let her go? And he's like, you've got it. And he lets her go. He's like, well, hallelujah, get it? Hallelujah. See, your name's Hal. And he's like, I get it. And Parallax pulls off Spectre's head, which is where we end up at the beginning of the story. And then Parallax is like, and now I'm going to throw you across the entire universe to the ends of time because I feel like it. And he just yeets Spectre's head across the universe. And as he's flying through the universe, Hal thinks to himself, and he's like, little by little, I feel myself being dissolved, disintegrated, erased. And there's like a little green glint of him being erased from the universe. And then Parallax is like, yes, now I have free reign to do whatever I want. I can take over the entire universe. You know what I might do? I might kick Joker's ass, take all of his minions, like all of his Jokerized villains, and try to take over the universe and recreate it again, and do whatever I want. And that's when the Spectre is like, actually, you're not going to do that. Because by throwing me to the ends of the universe, you allowed me to finally ascend beyond just myself and begin thinking outside of my own mind. Because I've been so caught up in myself and being me that I forgot that I became one with the universe recently. And so now I can just get rid of you without any feelings whatsoever. Because now that I'm part of the universe, I don't have to have feelings. I can do whatever I want. So instead of containing you within myself, instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep you contained within everything. Like within the entire universe. And that way you'll never get out. And so that's what he does. He uses his powers to make Parallax become one with the universe and be trapped within the universe itself. So there's like his entire conscience has just been spread across the entire universe, and now Parallax can't get out. And then Hal returns to Helen, because after the emotional journey that he's been through with Parallax, where his face is in a demon's, he feels ready that he's ready to become Helen's like the father figure that Helen needs at this point in time. And so Sarah's like, well, Helen was about to read her favorite book, Volume 4 of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle, so maybe we should read that. And that's when they hear a mysterious voice that says, I've always loved those stories. And Hal's just like, what do you want? And this mysterious person is like, actually, the proper question is, what do you want, Hal Jordan? After all, you called me. And it's revealed that this person talking to Hal is the Phantom Stranger. And so if you want to find out what happens next, you're going to have to continue reading the Spectre series by J.M. DeMatteis. Highly recommend that you read it. Especially if you love the Spectre and you love Hal Jordan. It perfectly combines those two characters. So you've got a lot of Green Lantern stuff, but you've also got a lot of Spectre stuff merged together into one story. And so yeah, highly recommend reading the whole Spectre series. J.M. DeMatteis does an amazing job exploring Hal's inner psyche and trying to help him repent for all of his sins and become a hero again. So, the next time we're talking about is The Adventures of Superman, issue 597, written by Joe Casey, with art by Derek Donovan and Wildstorm FX. Let's just say Joe Casey just completely screwed over Chuck Dixon and his event. And Dixon is either going to have to choose between derailing a massive B-plot in his event, which is Lex Luthor helping fight against the Joker and declaring war on him, or just completely ignore this issue and just have this issue be non-canon. I think Joe Casey did Dixon dirty, because if you can't tell, this issue involves Lex Luthor being Jokerized, which does not happen in the main story. At the moment, in Joker's Last Laugh, Lex Luthor is the president of the United States, and he has declared war on the Joker, and he is doing all within his efforts to stop the Joker. But in this, he gets Jokerized, which I'm guessing is not what Chuck Dixon wanted. He did not want the I'm just going to say it now. Chuck Dixon did not want Lex Luthor to become Jokerized, and this goes against his plans. So I'm curious what the next issue of Joker's Last Laugh is going to look like. Like, is Chuck Dixon going to change the story accordingly, where Lex Luthor is no longer the president for obvious reasons? Or is it going to continue on like this didn't even happen? I'd kind of prefer the latter, because this is kind of like an unfair amount of continuity breaking on Joe Casey's part. Like, what was he thinking? Like, come on. You can't do this with a major character who's playing a role in an event. That would be like if somebody was doing an event that heavily focused on, like, Nightwing, like he was like one of the main characters, but then in one of the tie-ins, the author just decided to, like, kill off Nightwing for some reason, or, like, put him out of commission, and then the writer is forced to take him out of the story, which has happened before. It happened in War of the Gods. It's just not good. Like, it's not good for a writer to do that when they're given the job of doing a tie-in, and then they just break continuity by doing stuff like this, where, yeah, Lex Luthor becomes Jokerized. And because he's Jokerized, he decides to go on another presidential campaign, even though he's already president, because he's insane. And the first thing that Vice President Pete Ross and Amanda Waller and all of the other members of Luthor's cabinet decide to do is they decide to kill him. They decide to send a squad of Luthor robots, like they're literally his own robots, after him. Like, that is their first, like, that is immediately what they go to, is they send a squad of robots to go and kill Jokerized Lex Luthor to end his presidential run. And so what happens is Lex Luthor goes on a crazy ride in a train to announce his new campaign as Joker Luthor. Clark Kent just happens to be at a station that he passes by, so he quickly swaps into his Superman gear to stop Lex. He has a confrontation with Lex where he reveals to Superman that he has a suitcase, and when he opens it up, there's a button in there, and he presses the button, and it communicates to a security guard who has also been Jokerized that he can go ahead with the plan, which is to activate all of the nukes. So Jokerized Luthor sends the signal to the guy, he activates all the nukes, they all get shot off at once. Superman flies out, he stops all the nukes, like he goes into space, like he grabs a bunch of them, pulls them into space, uses his freeze breath, and smashes them. Then the squad of Lexbots appear to kill Luthor and his bodyguards, who have also both been Jokerized. So they try shooting back against the Lexbots. They try fighting back. And Superman manages to come back in time and stop the Lexbots. And then Lex Luthor is taken away to Star Labs to be cured, and Pete Ross takes over as president and declares that they are going to bombard the Joker with everything they have. And that's the whole issue. It ends with Lex Luthor being sent to Star Labs to get cured, and Pete Ross is taken over. And I guess we'll see when we eventually get to issue 4 of Joker's Last Laugh, which is actually the very next issue. We'll find out whether or not Chuck Dixon ignores this entirely, this whole tie-in, or begrudgingly goes along with it because he's been completely screwed over. And he's like, screw you, Joe Casey. You forced me into this. Like, screw you. Like, you suck. So I guess we'll find out which road Dixon decides to go down. Does he ignore it, or does he begrudgingly change the story to fit with the tie-in? Which would probably be the first time in history that a writer has completely changed their event because of a tie-in. So, issue 4 of Joker Last Laugh. This one is drawn by Andy Kuhn, because there's a different art team every issue. The answer to whether or not Chuck Dixon and Scott Beater will ignore the last tie-in that we talked about? Yeah, absolutely. They completely ignore it. Lex Luthor never got Jokerized. According to Dixon and Beatty, they just completely ignore it. He's still fighting against the Joker, waging war on him, because the Joker has sent all of his Jokerized villains out to terrorize the towns, and so Lex Luthor has sent his armed forces out to deal with them. So they have to face these two characters. One's name is Warjack, another one is called White Dragon, not the one you're thinking of. He's like this guy who can set himself on fire, kind of like the Human Torch. So the armed forces fight them, and then Kilgore shows up. Kilgore, the technological robot thing that can take control of technology and change it and stuff. He appears. He changes all the guns of these military guys into grenades, killing them all, blowing them all up. It's pretty messed up. And then Lady Blackhawk shows up. She works for the Blackhawks, which are like a kind of like a military group in the DC universe who all drive like Black Hawk jets. And she teams up with this other character whose name is Mace, who is basically just a copy of Deadshot. And they manage to defeat White Dragon and Warjack and Kilgore. Meanwhile, Batman gets into contact with Kirk Langstrom. We find him fighting Dr. Light. Batman knocks him out. Then he calls Kirk Langstrom, and Langstrom reveals to Batman that the Joker toxin is killing its victims. So eventually, there's some of them have started ending up in comas, and if they don't cure them now, they will either die, or if they don't die, they'll be stuck as the Joker for a long time, and they'll have to deal with having multiple Jokers just existing, which is not what they want. Meanwhile, the Joker, having declared war on Luthor, wants to take his plan to the next extreme. So he creates a plan by, he finds a villain named Stormfront, who is like a Nazi guy who has the ability to control the weather. And then he finds this other villain called 104, who is like an element guy. And he tells them to work together for the plan. And the plan involves changing the weather in some way, like doing something with the weather. And that's apparently going to help deal with Lex Luthor. And, stop his ability to, make it pretty much impossible for Lex to stop the Joker's army of villains. We'll find out what he's going to do later. For now, we are going to visit Dinah and Shiloh, the two characters that we've been following throughout this event. They got sucked into the black hole that Black Mass, who is a villain who has the ability to create black holes, he sucked the entire slab, which is the prison, the slab, into a black hole, including everyone in it, which included Shiloh and Dinah. I actually discovered that Shiloh is the student of Scott Free, the Mr. Miracle, and he himself became a Mr. Miracle, and so that's what they were talking about when they mentioned that Shiloh was Mr. Miracle. So he's a Mr. Miracle in training. Dinah and Shiloh are stuck in this black hole, and so they need to find Black Mass and find a way to convince him to get them out of the black hole. But obviously Black Mass has been Jokerized, so it's going to be pretty hard to convince a Jokerized person to help them. They enter the slab to find Black Mass, but in doing so, they find all the other Jokerized villains, and so the Jokerized villains chase after Shiloh and Dinah. Eventually, Shiloh is able to hack into the systems of the prison to shut one of the steel doors to give them some time. Not a lot of time, though, because the villains are pounding on the doors, trying to break in. And so they meet Mr. Mind. Mr. Mind shows up, the little caterpillar, and he says that he could go into Black Mass's mind, take over his body, and force Black Mass to free them all from the slab. Because Mr. Mind hasn't been Jokerized, and he doesn't want to be stuck in a black hole either. So the plan is that. But the problem is, when the villains break through the door eventually, Dinah starts shooting at them, and Mr. Mind is like, "You idiot, he needs to be alive in order for me to take control of him." Dinah shoots a bullet straight through Black Mass's head that doesn't kill him immediately, but we're kind of left on a bit of a cliffhanger because he looks up and sees that he has a hole in his head directly right through his brain, and he's just like, "Oh, what? Oh, man, what happened?" And so it's like, is Black Mass gonna die? Are Dinah and Shiloh screwed? We're probably gonna have to find out in the next issue. Meanwhile, Harley succeeds in creating a cure with Kirk Langstrom, and she says that the reason she's able to do it is because it's not the first time she's created a cure for Joker's toxin, because apparently her pet hyenas ate Joker fish once, and it started making them go crazy, so she cured them. So she creates the cure, and they test it out on Dr. Zavanna, and it works. He turns back to normal. So they have a cure now. Meanwhile, Black Canary goes and visits the doctor who was responsible for diagnosing the Joker with his brain tumor. And when she gets there, she finds him pretty much drinking himself to death because he's seen all of the terrible things that have happened because of what he did. And then the big twist is that he reveals to Black Canary that Joker never had a tumor to begin with. He got so annoyed with how horrible the Joker was, that he wanted to finally get a one-up on him. So what he did was he took the brain scans of the Joker and he drew a fake tumor to make the Joker, like he drew a smudge on his brain to make the Joker think he had a tumor, because he thought it would make the Joker mellow out or something, like realizing that he's gonna die. He thought the Joker would have like an existential crisis and it would, change him and he would start acting differently. He wasn't expecting things to blow up like this and go crazy. So yeah, pretty crazy plot twist. I really like that plot twist, the big reveal that the Joker never had a tumor to begin with. And then we find out what the Joker's big plan is to deal with Lex Luthor. It's to get Stormfront and 104 to work together to create special clouds that rain his Joker toxin across the entire population, not only making every villain insane, but also everyone that gets hit by the rain. And so we end on this cliffhanger of civilians being hit by this Joker toxin rain beginning to go insane. And so we'll have to find out what happens next, as we got more tie-ins to look into. Eventually we'll get to issue 5, where we'll probably get to see what happens next, unless some of the tie-ins decide to show us what happens with this whole civilian going insane kind of thing that they're built up to. Also, Multiple Man, or like Mr. Multiple or whatever his name is, the guy that like every time he dies he gets a new power. Last time we left off with him, he'd also been sucked into the black hole and he was stuck on a spider's web because his current power is growing really small. We get to see what happened to him. He kills the spider. The spider doesn't get to eat him. He kills him with a paperclip, which is really fun. And then he sees Black Mass, and he tries to get Black Mass's attention, but Black Mass has been shot through the head, and Black Mass just falls over and lands on top of him. So it's assumed that Black Mass really is dead. I forgot to mention that like he does die. He falls over on top of Mr. Multiple. Alright, so the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is The Flash, issue 179, written by Jeff Johns, with art by Scott Collins and Doug Hazelwood. As you know, I've been reading The Flash on my other show, where we've been covering all of the Jeff Johns issues. Obviously, I have to include this one in this video because it's a tie-in, and it's a pretty damn good tie-in, if I do say so myself. Not only does it progress the current story of the Flash in a pretty satisfying way, but also Jeff has fun with the event and ties it in perfectly, and he follows all the rules. He's the only one who follows them all. J.M. DeMatteis almost followed every rule except for the rule of not including the Joker in the issue, but on the bright side, what he did with the Joker didn't affect the main event at all, so it was okay. But Jeff doesn't include the Joker. He has Flash face villains that aren't his own, that have been Jokerized. And, yeah, like, that's what he does, and it's pretty great. So, at the moment, in The Flash, if you haven't been watching the other show, I highly recommend you do. Pied Piper has been taken into custody because it's believed that he's killed his parents. That Hartley Rathaway has killed his parents. Murillo and Chaya are button heads as usual. They work at the Keystone City Police Department. They've become partners, and they are overseeing Piper's incarceration. So he gets brought in. He has to get his picture taken, and so things aren't looking good for Hartley. Meanwhile, Linda quit her job as a reporter, which I really hated. I was not a fan of that decision by Johns, and has enrolled in medical school because she's trying to, she wants to become a mum, and Jeff is clearly setting up the idea of Wally and Linda having children, and so she's gone to medical school to become a doctor so that she can work around children more often. So yeah, she's in the middle of a class studying. A guy in her class, whose name is Cliff, recognizes her as a former reporter, and as he's trying to get to know her, Wally busts into the class and is like, sorry, Linda, I need to take you out of the class, and we need to talk. And Linda's like, okay, I'm sorry, miss, but, like, Wally's gonna bring you a lovely fresh apple when I come back. So Wally reveals to Linda that Hartley has been taken into custody because he's possibly murdered his parents. And Linda's like, oh crap, we need to go talk to him. Like, we need to get a chance to talk to him. In a previous issue, Gorilla Grodd broke out and caused havoc, so he's been locked back up in Iron Heights by Wolf, the warden of Iron Heights. Really brutal man, tortures criminals, like has them like beat up and stuff behind closed curtains. And it's also hinted that he does the same to employees who don't listen to his directions, because he tells these two wardens to, you know, get lost and go do another job, and he's like smacking his hand with a baton like, I am going to whoop your ass if you don't do something. Like, he's a real nasty man. So the Top appears in this issue for some reason. Roscoe Dillon. Up until this point, Roscoe Dillon is still dead, and yet he appears in this issue where his mind is being messed with. He's just like complaining about his head hurting and stuff, and that the world just won't stop spinning. And Wolf is like, shut up, Top. We said we'd do you with you later. Which is a bit weird. The Top is alive again, I guess. And that's when Iron Heights gets attacked by Jokerized criminals, and Wolf has to go deal with them. There's this villain whose name is Deadline, and then you've got Deadshot Jokerized, and then you've got a Jokerized version of Malcolm Merlin, who I think was just called Merlin at the moment. Like, at this point in time, I don't even know if Malcolm was his name yet. Just Merlin. So they're killing security guards and stuff, and Deadline holds Wolf at gunpoint, and what Wolf does is, it's kind of badass. He uses his mind powers on Deadline, because he has the ability to control minds. So he uses it to mess with Deadline's mind and like cause his head to hurt enough that he drops his gun. And then Wolf grabs his gun and blows Deadline's brains out. Just shoots him in the head, and his head just goes... And then Deadline just drops to the ground, and Malcolm Merlin is like, I mean, his name is Deadline, so... you know, now it's more fitting because he's dead. Meanwhile, Captain Boomerang is being transferred to Iron Heights. And if we remember, previously in the Wade run, Captain Boomerang was blown up by one of his own boomerangs, and he ended up unable to walk for the rest of his life. His body is completely just singed. He's covered in bandages. So I appreciate that John's remembered that, and he tried to keep that around. You know, maybe he forgot that the Top was dead, or maybe he'll reveal why the Top is back. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe I'm getting it too ahead of myself. Maybe John's just going to explain it, that the Top never actually died. But yeah, the fact that he remembered that Boomerang is, you know, unable to walk. So yeah, he's being transferred to Iron Heights. That'll be important in a bit. Wally and Linda go to visit Hartley, where he immediately just starts crying and hugs Wally, because Wally's his best friend. He's like, oh my god, my parents are dead. And Linda's like, I hate to ask this, but did you kill them, Piper? And Piper's like, I think I did. And then Warp, another villain, who is also Jokerized, shows up, and he grabs Deadshot and Merlin and transports them to where Wally Captain Boomerang, like, because Captain Boomerang is right outside, like, he just happens to be right outside the building where Wally and Piper and Linda are talking. So Deadshot goes and visits Boomerang. He rips open the doors of the ambulance that he's in, and then he shoots Captain Boomerang with a dart full of Joker toxin, which Jokerizes Captain Boomerang and also makes him healthy again. Like, so now Captain Boomerang is back to being able to walk again. He's no longer needs his bandages anymore. He's good as new. Joker toxin can bring you back from, you know, pretty much near comatose state and third-degree burns all over your body, apparently. While Merlin shoots an arrow at Piper, which hits him in the back, and the arrow is full of Jokerized venom stuff, and it turns Piper, like, it Jokerizes him. And then he shoots another arrow which blows up the prison, but using his super speed, Wally is able to get Piper and Linda to safety, and that's when they... and then he uses, like, the bricks of the prison that's just been blown up, like the prison cell, to encase Merlin in bricks and keep him contained. But Piper is Jokerized, and he uses his flute to create a piercing noise that really hurts Wally and Linda's ears. So Wally quickly grabs the flute, and but then he's hit by a boomerang because Captain Boomerang's been Jokerized. So he starts throwing boomerangs at Flash, and he's like, "Good A, a real ripper, eh?" Also, it makes sense that Deadshot was going to help his friend because, or like, not his friend, but his partner, because they worked on the Suicide Squad together, so I kind of like how it ties in with that, with their relationship. So Wally quickly grabs Linda and takes her home immediately to keep her out of danger, and then heads back and punches Deadshot square in the face. And so Boomerang's like, "That's me, mate, twit!" And he just starts throwing boomerangs at Wally. One of them whizzes by his side. The other one stabs directly into his foot, like into his ankle, which causes him to fall down. Captain Boomerang goes to kill Wally, but Piper grabs him from the neck behind and starts strangling Captain Boomerang to death. And Wally's like, "Piper, stop!" And he's like, "No." And he starts turning back to normal, and he's like, "He should die. He should." And it was like, Captain Boomerang's just like Wally is just like, "Stop!" And he just grabs Piper and he shoves him into the nearby wall, like slams him into the wall, releasing Boomerang and saving his life. He's like, "Piper, I'm sorry. The Joker juice was still expecting you." And Piper's like, "No, it wasn't." And that's when all the police come in and they're all like, "Freeze, Piper!" And he's like, "He's not a criminal, Murillo, not yet." It's like, "Piper, you say the word, tell me you're innocent, and I'm taking you out of here now. Just tell me you're innocent." And he doesn't say anything. And so they take Piper away, and Murillo is like, "I'm sorry, Flash." And we have a shot of Wally just looking defeated, looking down, just like... because one of his best friends is admitting to murdering his parents. So Piper gets taken into Iron Heights, where it's revealed that a lot of the people have been taken away from Iron Heights to be healed at Belle Reve. So Piper's all alone. They're like, "You're all alone." And the door closes behind him, and he's like, "What?" And he's been like tied to a chair. And Wolf comes in and he's like, "Hello, Mr. Rathaway." And he starts like tapping his baton against a window. And a bunch of guards swarm into the room and start beating Rathaway. Like, they start beating Piper, like, just mercilessly. And Wolf is like, "Welcome back to Iron Heights." And that's where it ends. And incredible issue. Not only a great tie-in, but such a haunting ending. Really sucks that this has happened to Piper, and I really hope that I hope that this isn't like, oh, Piper's becoming a villain, like he's going to become a criminal again. It's like, I hope that this all gets sorted out And Wolf, I just want Wolf to get taken down because this is just sad. I don't want to see Hartley getting the crap beaten out of him while in prison. Like, this sucks. Like, I hope things get better. But yeah, great tie-in. Like I said, if you're not reading John's Flash, like, it's great. There are some things about it that I don't like. I already mentioned Linda's quitting being a reporter, but, like, this was a great issue. So, the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Superman, The Man of Steel, issue 119. This one will kill ya, and Krypto 2. It's written by Mark Schultz, with art by Yvel Guichette, Dexter Vines, and Walden Wong. Before we get into the story of this issue, there's a little bit of backstory that I've got to go through to catch you up on what's currently going on in Superman, because it directly ties and is very important in this issue. Luckily, it explained it to me. I also had to do a little bit of research. So before this issue, there was a story called Return to Krypton. Because at this point in time, Superman has a Krypto, and he discovers that this Krypto is from an alternate Krypton that is within the Phantom Zone. So after discovering this, they go to this Krypton, and this Krypton is like, it's like all classic Krypton stuff. So like Jor-El is alive, and like everyone's alive. And Krypto is Jor-El's dog from this Krypton. So Krypto reunites with Jor-El, and they save Krypton in the Phantom Zone, and they manage to they make the difficult decision of shutting it off from everything else, like shutting this Krypton off so that it remains protected. And Jor-El tells Krypto to stay behind and remain as Superman's Krypto. We all know the villain Eradicator, who was at one point posing as Superman during the Return of the Superman event. He recently went on a rampage, and the way that Superman defeated him was he showed him that this alternate Krypton existed, and Eradicator couldn't handle the concept of another Krypton existing, so it shut him down mentally. And then Superman took him and put him in the anti-zero chamber, which is this freezing cold chamber that powers the Steelworks, which is where John Henry Irons works alongside Emil Hamilton. So it's everything that we need to know beforehand. Killer Frost and Icicle Jr. have been, or at least he's just called Icicle now, have been taken over by the Joker Toxin. Killer Frost did appear in Joker's Last Laugh, where she died because she was one of the characters that was dropped into Chemo and completely just dissolved. So I don't know why she's back. I guess Mark Schultz just didn't read Joker's Last Laugh and didn't see that she was killed. I mean, we didn't see her die, but, like, it's pretty easy to assume that she's dead, because we also didn't see her get out either. But she's here, she's Jokerized alongside Icicle, and they're attacking Steelworks because they want to draw the power from the anti-zero chamber, because they have ice abilities, and Killer Frost has the ability to absorb cold. Superman discovers this because the whole city has been frozen over, and he goes and visits Maggie Sawyer, who mentions that she's going to be moving over to the GCPD, so this might be the last time that her and Superman work together, and she tells him about Steelworks, and that they've got like an energy signature coming from it, so Superman decides that that's probably the place that is being attacked, and he heads there, and he finds Killer Frost and Icicle attacking the place, and Killer Frost absorbs the power from the anti-zero chamber after freezing John and Dr. Hamilton. And that's when Stripes shows up alongside Superman, because he's in Metropolis helping with everything that's frozen, saving people. So he teams up with Superman and gets immediately frozen by Killer Frost. And then we don't see him for the rest of the issue. But it turns out that obviously Eradicator is inside the anti-zero chamber, and so by drawing from its powers and absorbing the cold and stuff, Killer Frost has set Eradicator free. And Eradicator has been intoxicated with the Joker toxin. So he's become, like, Jokerized. And what the Joker toxin has done is it's changed his thought pattern. So knowing that this alternate Krypton exists no longer shuts down his system. And because of that, he wants to find it and destroy it. He doesn't know exactly where it is, but he has a feeling that it's at the Fortress of Solitude. So he almost kills Killer Frost and Icicle. Like, he just takes them out of commission because they want to, use his power and, like, team up with him. But Eradicator has no use for them, so he just wipes them out. And then heads off to the Fortress of Solitude. Superman chases after him while Steel stays behind to look after John and Hamilton and stay out the rest of the book. And so Eradicator heads to the Fortress of Solitude, and in order to get into the Fortress of Solitude, there's this sphere that contains it. And it's like a key, it's like a puzzle sphere, and you have to, like, undo it in order to get in, and Eradicator doesn't know how to undo the key to get into the fortress, so he's stuck on the outside. So instead he just starts wailing on it, trying to beat it, starts kicking it around like a soccer ball, and it's working. Like, Kellex is on the inside, that's Clark's little robot friend. He says that, like, the sphere is taking damage, and that if Eradicator keeps going at it, he's going to eventually break through. Krypto wants to go out and fight Eradicator, but Kellex won't let him. Also, at this point in time, Kellex has been, his, like, mind and stuff has been, like, altered. And so he's talking in, like, slang, like, gang slang. Like, it's weird. It's like rap slang that he's, I don't know what you would call it, but, like, that kind of talk. It's really weird. Also, at this point in time, Superman has his own army of robots that are just called his warbots. So he just has those in the Fortress of Solitude, and so they're thinking of letting him out to attack the Eradicator. Eventually, Krypto breaks through the sphere to go and attack Eradicator against the wills of Kellex and the Warbots, and he fights the Eradicator, but, like, and he manages to get a nasty chunk out of the Eradicator as well. Like, he gets to bite a good chunk out of him, but the Eradicator is really strong, and so he just, like, punches Krypto, badly hurts him. The Superman shows up and he's like, "Don't you dare hit my dog, Eradicator!" And he's like, "This is a risky move, but I'm gonna let Eradicator into the Fortress of Solitude." So he lets Eradicator into the Fortress of Solitude, and Eradicator is like, "Alright, where's the Phantom Zone device so I can destroy it and, go into it and destroy this alternate Krypton because it's within the Phantom Zone." And basically, the way that Superman plans on defeating Eradicator is he has this giant pillar called the Pillar of Stability. It's made out of, like, the universe's metals. And so, using his heat vision and Krypto's heat vision and crossing beams, they managed to draw the electrons out of the Eradicator and connect his electrons to the pillar so that Eradicator becomes stuck to the pillar for the foreseeable future. So Eradicator, against his will, gets stuck to the pillar, and then they just leave him there. They decide to shut the doors and leave him trapped in there for as long as possible and hope that he never escapes. But he probably will, because it's a comic book, so, Eradicator will be back one day. And luckily, Superman, despite all the destruction that's happened to the Fortress of Solitude, Superman has a helmet that John Henry Irons made for him that allows him to just fix everything. I'm currently reading Bendis Superman, and in that series, the Fortress of Solitude gets destroyed, and yet Bendis happened to forget that Superman has this helmet that lets him just fix it and reimagine it just using his mind. Because that's what he does. He puts it on, and he just thinks about it being fixed and reimagined and recreated into a new Fortress of Solitude, and it does, instantly. And he takes the helmet off and he decides that he's going to go on a nice fly with Crypto, and that's where the issue ends. It ends with him being like, "Come on, Crypto, let's go fly around the world after all that fuss. Let's relax and have a nice little fly together." And so they fly off, and yeah, that's the end of the tie-in. Overall, I'd say it's pretty good. I liked seeing. It was interesting seeing Superman face. Even though they didn't really fight, it was cool to see him come into confrontation with Killer Frost and Icicle, even if it does go against the continuity of the established event of Killer Frost being dead. But whatever. Like, we can just say, like, oh, she got out of camo off panel. Yeah, seeing the Eradicator be Jokerized and have that affect his emotions in the opposite way, like, it's what they did in the Creeper, like in the Superboy issue with the Creeper, but this time it was actually better, because that time, like, that issue sucked. That story sucked, but this one was good. They did much better using it with the Eradicator than with the Creeper. So, the next time that we're going to be talking about is Supergirl, issue 63, guest starring Batgirl, Two Face to Face, written by Peter David with art by Leonard Kirk and Robin Riggs. Previously in Supergirl, we know all the stuff about Buzz. If you want to know about Buzz, you can rewatch the Our Worlds at War video that I did. There's a couple of Supergirl tie-ins in there that deal with the whole Buzz situation. All you really need to know, though, is that he's a horrible person who has done a lot of bad things, and one of those things being he left a girl to be assaulted by a bunch of men, and even though he went back to help her, it still bit him in the ass later, because he was arrested because the girl turned him over to the police saying that he just let her get assaulted. So, yeah, he gets put in jail, and then he gets the crap beaten out of him because he gets put in the same jail cell as the guys that assaulted the girl, and Supergirl abandons him. So he gets really upset at Supergirl and decides to team up with Two-Face and hire a doctor to create a monster to fight Supergirl. And that monster is Bizarro Girl, or Bizarro Supergirl. So the issue begins with Bizarro Supergirl and Supergirl fighting, or Bizarro Supergirl just beating the crap out of Supergirl. So, Cassie Kane, aka Batgirl, has to come in and save Supergirl. Because it's Bizarro Supergirl, she says everything backwards, so she's like saying, "I'm not gonna hurt you," but she's actually meaning like, "I'm gonna hurt you, and she's like, "I'm not gonna hurt you so much that you're not gonna die. Like, that you're gonna be completely fine," and that's her saying, like, "I'm gonna kill you." But, so she starts running at Cassie, and Cassie runs out of the way, and Bizarro Supergirl flies straight into an electrical box where she starts getting electrocuted, and Cassie grabs Supergirl and gets her to safety, while Bizarro just enjoys getting electrocuted. She's just sitting there getting electrocuted, like, ah, woo, yeah. Like, it's pretty funny, just getting electrocuted over and over again. Buzz and Two-Face have both been... They were on the way to Arkham Asylum to get DNA from Batman's Rogues Gallery at the... because the Doctor requires it. And on the way, they got Jokerized. That's right, Buzz got Jokerized, because in the previous issue of Joker's Last Laugh, the Joker toxin has now become airborne within the public, so some people in the public are starting to become Jokerized. There's a couple of people in this tie-in who begin to become Jokerized, and it's assumed that's why Buzz was Jokerized alongside Two-Face, even though he's not necessarily a supervillain. So they're both crazy, but Buzz is dealing with his inner torment of the things that he's done and the things that have happened to him. And even though he's Jokerized and he's supposed to think everything is funny, the stuff he's done isn't funny to him. And he actually, he ends up having a complete breakdown, because he's like, I did this good thing, I helped this girl, and then I got like, and then like you abandoned me, and like that's supposed to be funny, but it's not funny. It's sad, and I'm sad. And then I went to Two Face to get revenge by creating this monster to fight you, and it was supposed to make me happy, and it was supposed to be funny, but it's not funny, and I feel awful, and I'm really sorry. Like, and I'm so sorry. And he just breaks down crying, still Jokerized. So he's like laughing in between and stuff. And Supergirl's like, I'm sorry as well. Like, and they kind of hug it out, and it's kind of the beginning of Buzz's redemption as a character. Uh, Two Face spends most of the issue tormenting the Doctor because he's like, like, we don't need you anymore. So I'm gonna shoot you. But obviously, we have to decide whether or not I actually go through with it by flipping my coin. Now, normally, when I read Two-Face stories, I don't like it when Two-Face ignores the coin. I always think that whenever he flips the coin, Two-Face should always agree with it and follow it, because otherwise, what is the point? What's the point of the coin if Two-Face doesn't listen to it? It makes him much more interesting of a character if he does actually listen to the coin and doesn't do reflips and stuff. In this issue, Two-Face does reflips, but it makes sense because he's been Jokerized. So I'm like, okay, like, he's Jokerized, so of course he's just going to keep doing reflips. And it's not that he does one reflip. He reflips the coin 400 times. He just keeps reflipping it. And then he's like, alright, 3 more times. And the Doctor's just like, oh. And then he flips it 3 more times, and he's like, alright, we're going to go for another 10. And he doesn't go for the second 10. He ends up being like, you know what, I'm bored, I've had enough fun, I'm going to shoot you now. And as he goes to pull the trigger, his gun gets knocked out of his hand by Cass. But then he's like, oh, you knocked out my gun? Well, good thing I'm Two-Face, because I have 2 guns. And then he pulls out another gun on Cass, and then grabs his other gun. He has both guns, but he gets crap beaten out of him by Cass. And, so he gets taken down by Cass. He asks Bizarro Supergirl to take care of Supergirl, and so they begin fighting again. And that's when Supergirl discovers that Bizarro Supergirl has heat vision, much to her shock, because Supergirl doesn't have heat vision. So it doesn't make sense that Bizarro Girl would have that. So she's like, maybe she's not actually a clone of me. Maybe she's a clone of somebody else. And so Bizarro Supergirl blows up a bunch of barrels, causing them to explode. There's this awesome shot of her walking through the explosion completely on fire. It's so awesome. I love it. And Supergirl gets sent flying into the ocean, where she sees Bizarro Supergirl fly off in a blaze of flame. So she's probably going to come into conflict with Bizarro Supergirl again in the future. And then they take Two-Face in, and this is the moment when Supergirl has her little moment with Buzz, where he admits to everything he's done and how terrible he feels, and and it ends with Two-Face being like, "It's gonna take much longer. I'm double parked," because he's Two-Face. And yeah, that's the whole issue. I think Peter David did a good job of continuing to tell the story that he wanted to tell while including the Jokerized stuff, and he just happened to already be using a villain that wasn't Supergirl's, which is Two-Face, so he's still following the rule of, have your character fight a villain who is not in their rogues gallery. I mean, she still fights Bizarro Supergirl, but there was no way of avoiding that, because this was this was continuing on from the last issue, so I can't really expect Peter David to just drop the story after having a cliffhanger of Supergirl and Bizarro Supergirl fighting. So, the next tie-in that I'm going to be talking about is Green Lantern issue 143, written by Judd Winnick with art by Dale Eaglesham and Rodney Ramos. I'm actually reading Green Lantern at the moment. It's one of the series that I read on a regular basis. So there's a couple of things that you need to know before this issue to kind of catch you up on what's going on. Previously, Kyle Rayner has discovered that his ring is now has infinite power. It never runs out. He doesn't have to recharge it anymore. And he also has infinite possibilities when it comes to using his powers. Like, it doesn't seem to be any kind of limit. He can literally do anything. He can create exact copies of himself with power rings of their own. Like, he is close to omniscient at the moment, or at least he has the capability of that. Like, he doesn't know what his capabilities are yet, and he's afraid to give in to this seemingly unlimited power that he now has. There is another character called Alexander who has been reoccurring in the Green Lantern series, and so many years ago, Sinestro got his own ring, which was a yellow ring, from the negative universe of Quad, and eventually that ring was passed on to, after Sinestro's death, that ring was passed on to Guy Gardner, and then Guy lost the ring, and now the ring has made it into the hands of this guy named Alexander, who is an artist who is just absolutely insane. So he grabbed the ring, and because he's all religious, satanic zealot guy, he just brings hell onto Earth and wants to just cause all sorts of misery and stuff because he believes that that's what he should do. It's his calling. At the moment, there isn't a lot known about him other than that he is insane and he is going to use this Yellow Ring's energy to cause all sorts of chaos and fear and just awful stuff. And so I think it's in later issues that we're finally going to really discover what this character is all about. He was defeated by Kyle Rayner and Alan Scott, and then he went missing, and they don't know where he's gone. And we discover in this issue that he is in some unnamed country in Europe where there are these dark woods and this city on the edge of the dark woods. People are going missing. They head in there, they say there's tales of these creatures inside, and whoever goes in there disappears. It turns out that they're being killed by Alexander. The ring is now controlling him, the constructs from the ring, because he creates these demon constructs from his yellow ring, and they've started to gain a sentience of their own, or he's just so insane that he believes that his constructs, he's given his constructs free will, so now they're ordering him around to do their bidding and find sacrifices for them. So it's really gross. There's one construct that shows up and he's got a person's head on his belt, and the other constructs are sitting on a throne made out of corpses, and they tell Alexander that he needs to go out and find more sacrifices for him and basically take over the world for them so that they can rule it as, supreme rulers of the world. It's an interesting concept of somebody who has a ring and is controlled by their own constructs, where the constructs are in control over the over the ring wielder. It's an interesting concept. Meanwhile, Jade is a member of the Green Lantern Corps at the moment, who is currently dating Kyle Rayner. They're dealing with the Jokerized villains throughout the city, trying to fix things that they've done, what's happened to the Statue of Liberty. So they fix the Statue of Liberty, even though its head did get taken off in the JSA issue. The head of the Statue of Liberty was taken off, and then it was fixed at the end of the issue using magic. They fixed it. So unless a villain destroyed it again and then Kyle fixed it again, it just seems like a small continuity error that you'll only notice if you're reading all the tie-ins, but still Still a continuity area, but it's fine. It's just a small thing. The villain that Judd Winnick has chosen to make Jokerized in this issue is Graven, who was in the Our Worlds at War series. He's a member of Kyle's Rogues Gallery, and he is the son of Darkseid. For a while, it was kind of like, is he really the son of Darkseid? But very, recently, Darkseid did reveal that he is his son. But I think he's a bastard son of him, so he doesn't like him. So, Graven has been Jokerized, and he's reading lots and lots of books about jokes. Like, bad books. Knock jokes and stuff like that. Meanwhile, another thing that's been going on in Green Lantern is there's this character named Terry, who is a friend of Kyle Rayner and who helps him because Kyle has started writing comic books for a magazine, and Terry is his co-publicist or like his co-worker. Terry is only, 16 years old, 14 years old. And he recently came out to Kyle Rayner. Like, he came out to him. Terry is gay. And it was a very hard thing for him to do. He actually has a crush on Kyle, and Kyle had to, let him down softly and be like, I'm not gay, but there's nothing wrong with you being gay. And so now Terry reveals to Kyle that he revealed that he was gay to his mum, and unfortunately, her reaction was bad at first. It started off as, she was in lots of denial and was like, oh, it's a phase, and then it changed to she just doesn't want to talk about it at all. She also told his dad, and his dad, tried to throw him out of the house, but then Terry, can't, and Kyle was like, what? And Terry's like, no, it's okay, he didn't actually mean it. It was an unfortunate reaction that he had. He, immediately apologized afterward. But now, things between me and my parents are a little bit strained. And so Kyle has to kind of talk him through it and be like, well, just, make sure that they know that, it's still, you're still you. And that's all that matters. And it should eventually, things should blow over. And then he asks Terry why he even told her now. And he says it's because they were watching a music video of Britney Spears and he complimented on her shoes. And he always said that his mum had a idea that he might have been gay. And so that was kind of the catalyst that caused him to blurt it out. So yeah, that's what's currently going on with Kyle and Terry. Meanwhile, there's this guy named Ronald Feltz who tried to be a comedian, but he sucks at comedy. He's just not funny. But he knows what comedy is. He knows a lot about it. So he created his own comedy club. But unfortunately, the comedy club is going to be shut down and turned into a coffee shop. And when he enters his office, he sees a bomb inside it, and the bomb blows up, killing him and destroying his comedy club. And then comedy clubs throughout all of New York begin blowing up, killing hundreds of people. And then we find the last remaining comedy theater where a world-class comedian, whose name isn't revealed in this, is currently being held hostage. It turns out the person responsible for all of this was Graven. Because he's been Jokerized, and because Graven's whole thing is that he wants to take over and be, the leader of anything. So because he's been Jokerized, he wants to become the leader of comedy and, the greatest comedian in New York. So he destroyed all of the comedy clubs so there will be no competition. And so now he's performing in front of the audience, just telling awful jokes. And if the audience doesn't laugh and his show bombs, he will, it will literally bomb because he'll blow everyone else up in the theater, killing everyone. So Kyle shows up to stop him. He grabs, his cane and pulls, he creates a cane construct and pulls Graven off stage. And they have a massive fight where Graven reveals to him that he has the bomb underneath that he's going to set off. Jade quickly gets everybody out to safety and away from the building, away from the bomb, and then finds out that the bomb is currently hidden behind a bunch of triggers and that she might not be able to get through to it without triggering the bomb. But she manages to, Kyle kind of talks her through it. She manages to get to the bomb and she can't stop it. So Kyle uses his, new omniscient, level of ring abilities to encase Graven in a concrete slab so that he can't get out. And then he just grabs the bomb and takes it into space and puts it in a big ball to contain the blast. Or he doesn't take it into space, but he takes it far away from the city, as far as he can take it before it explodes. He contains it in the blast in a ball of energy, and it works. He successfully stops the bomb from exploding. Normally, Kyle doesn't want to give in to this kind of power, but because so many people were in danger, and the idea of, he thinks back to Hal and, Coast City being blown up, and that's kind of what makes him make the easy decision to just give in to this power and use it to save all these people. So, everyone is saved. They all kind of look up to Kyle and they see him glowing green in the sky. And Alexander sees Kyle glowing in the distance. And it calls to him. And so Alexander is like, I'm going to follow the light and find Kyle, the man responsible for defeating me, and get my revenge. And so, yeah, that's where it ends. That's where the tie-in ends. Overall, pretty good tie-in. Ties pretty well into the ongoing story of Green Lantern while doing some pretty fun stuff with Graven. I really like the idea of Graven blowing up all of the comedy clubs to try and become the best comedian in New York. That was really fun. Graven is also kind of like a villain that I don't really care about either, so it's always fun when writers actually do something interesting with him. So the next tie-in issue I was going to read and talk about was Wonder Woman issue 175, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to read it, and I'm going to skip it because it has nothing to do with the event, and it also just does, because it ties into the event barely, and in the most, in the least way possible. Phil Jimenez was like, I'm not doing it, but I have to, so I'll put one Jokerized guy in it, and he'll barely do anything, and Jim Lee drew the cover of this issue, and on the cover he had a Jokerized Cersei standing behind Diana, which means Cersei has to become Jokerized at some point. So what I'm going to do is I'll have most of this story just be a completely separate story that is currently connected to a lot of stuff that's going into Wonder Woman, going on in Wonder Woman. So I'll have Pan show up, and he's Jokerized, and he tries to take over a big ship, and he gets taken care of. He gets thrown out of the pilot's seat by a couple of Blackhawks, I think they are, and defeated. And during the course of the story, there will be one page where Pan throws some Joker toxin in Cersei's face, Jokerizing her for 3 panels, because she just uses her magic to make herself unjokerized again almost immediately after. And yeah, that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about it, because the whole issue is 40 pages long. I'm not reading Wonder Woman, so I'm not going to go back and read, the previous issues of Wonder Woman just to understand what's happening in this issue that has nothing to do with the event that I'm talking about. That's not what we're here for. I'm not here to just talk about an issue of Wonder Woman. I'm here to talk about Joker's Last Laugh. And because this issue has nothing to do with it, I'm going to skip it. So, yeah, that's that. On to the next tie-in. So, issue 5 of Joker's Last Laugh. We are at the penultimate issue. This one's drawn by Ron Randall. So Harley Quinn is currently at Star Labs helping Kirk Langstrom to create a cure for the Joker toxin. And this issue begins with her holding Kirk at gunpoint because she wants to get out and get to the Joker. Because she's really, she's always eventually going to side with the villains. And because of the stress of being at gunpoint, Kirk transforms into Man-Bat. And so they have to, keep Harley away from him so that he doesn't kill her. And also turn Kirk back to normal, which they do by shooting a tranquilizer into his neck. So it turns him back into Kirk Langstrom. And, they're like, how did she get a gun in here? I thought we checked her. And they were like, yeah, we checked her twice. Guess we better check her 3 times. It's kind of this weird, gross moment for the army men where they start, stripping Harley to check if she has any more weapons. There's literally a panel where she's only wearing her mask and nothing else. And she's holding her costume in front of her as she's being, as they're, looking for her weapons, smiling. It's such a weird and creepy part of the story. Meanwhile, Huntress goes to Arkham Asylum because Tim Drake, aka Robin, was sent there and they haven't heard back from him, so she's gone there to see if he's okay. When she gets there, she gets attacked by the ventriloquist, but she uses the cure on him and it works. And they come to the conclusion that if they manage to use the cure before someone has been a Joker for 48 hours, it should work on them. Batman's busy looking for the Joker. Nightwing is busy at Blackgate, and we'll find out what they are doing later. So Huntress is alone going into Arkham Asylum, and we find that Tim Drake is currently being tortured by different, or at least the Jokers are all the Jokerized villains are all attempting to torture Tim. But Tim keeps dodging out of their way when they try and, hit him and stuff. But then it turns out that Killer Croc is there, and he plans on eating Tim. Tim is currently chained up, and he's gonna eat him. So, Huntress has to get in there and save Tim before he gets killed. Meanwhile, Shiloh and Dinah are still trapped in the black hole inside the slab. And so they need to get out, but Dinah has shot Black Mass in the head, so they can't use him to get out anymore. But Multiple Man, or Mr. Multiple, is currently underneath Black Mass, which would have killed him. And so their way of getting out might be to kill Mr. multiple times until he has the ability to get them out of the black hole. But King Shark is currently hunting them down, so they have to take care of him first. So what they do is they electrocute him, and then Shiloh, by putting electricity into the water because the whole place is flooded, and then Shiloh grabs a fire extinguisher and blasts it all over King Shark, which fills up his gills, causing him to suffocate and pass out, and then they're able to put him in a nearby tank away from everyone. And then Shiloh, they also put Shiloh in a cage so that she wouldn't get in the way, because the last time she did something, she ruined everything by shooting Black Mass in the head. So they had to, keep her locked up so that she didn't get in the way anymore. Mr. Multiple, there's a cool shot of Mr. Multiple underneath Black Mass where you see his heartbeat run out and then jump back up again because he's come back to life. Dinah, Black Canary, that Dinah, because there's 2 Dinahs in this story, so it's really confusing when talking about it. Black Canary calls Barbara and tells her what she's discovered, which is that the Joker isn't actually dying and that it was a joke that the Doctor played on him, and he wasn't expecting the Joker to go to this level of, chaos. So Babs has to contact Batman and tell him that the Joker isn't dead. Meanwhile, isn't gonna die. Meanwhile, Batman goes to the Easter Islands where the Joker is supposed to be, but he's not there anymore, and he finds a note that the Joker has written, which is all the steps of his like to-do list. I feel like Chuck Dixon saw that tie-in. Remember that tie-in where like the Joker was like sending people to kill Harley Quinn? I'm sure Chuck Dixon saw that tie-in and was like, oh, that goes against the story, because in my story the Joker is trying to get an heir from Harley Quinn. So I guess I'm going to have to, like, try and add that in. And so the way he does that is on the to-do list. It says, number 2, marry Harley, and it's crossed out. And next to it, it says, murder Harley. And then the father heir with Harl is crossed out as well. So it's kind of like, oh, he changed his mind. Originally, he was going to marry and have her child, but now he's just trying to kill her. And then the final step is to kill Batman. So that's been the Joker's, like, the final part of his plan this whole time, is to kill Batman. Nightwing and Azrael are at Blackgate scoping it out, and that's when Nightwing gets pulled into a portal by the villain Warp, who can create portals, and another villain, Mammoth, who is a Teen Titan villain, and they start, taunting Dick, saying that they're going to close the hole on him and cut him in half. And the Joker's actually in this dimension to visit Nightwing. And Nightwing's just like, Joker, you don't need to do this. We can help you. And the Joker's like, actually, Wingnut, you can't. I'm sort of committed to this plan at this point. So it's almost like the Joker is saying, like, I know I'm actually not dying. Like, it's almost like he knows that he's not going to die, because he's like, I'm doing it anyway. I know I'm not going to die. So I'm committed to this plan. He's like, I need you to send you a message. I need you to send a message to Batman. And he kicks Nightwing out of the hole. Nightwing's got a piece of paper stapled to his chest, and he's bleeding out pretty badly. And on the piece of paper it says Gotham Cathedral, as like a little bit of a hint of where the Joker is going. Huntress continues her way through Arkham Asylum, where she meets a villain known as Caesar, who tells her where Tim is and that he's going to be eaten by Killer Croc if she doesn't hurry. So Babs directs Huntress throughout Arkham Asylum to make her way to Tim, where she gets chased by this guy named Joe Gardner, who is a duplicate of Guy Gardner, like an evil duplicate of him. She manages to barely get away from him by activating a metal door which shuts down, allowing her to get away from him. The idea, so, like, Shiloh and Dinah are going to try and kill Mr. multiple times until he has the power that they need. And Mr. Multiple doesn't want to help them. So Mr. Mind, who they are currently working with, the little caterpillar, is eventually going to go into Mr. Multiple's head and force him to help them. And Dinah decides to take the dirty job of killing Mr. Multiple over and over again until he has the powers that they're looking for. So he shoots him in the head, and then she's like, forgive me, Father, and she gets ready to, like, load her gun and shoot him again. Meanwhile, the Joker is at the Gotham Cathedral, where he's praying to the Lord for his sins. He's like, I've been a real skunkaroo. And that's when he's there to meet with Rancor, and who is going to become, like, his new heir once he dies. So maybe the Joker really doesn't know he's not going to die. I don't know. But what we do know is that the Joker is going to fight Batman. That's what he's preparing for. He's got a couple of boxing gloves on. He's got boxing shorts which have J-Man on them. And he's preparing to have one last throwdown with Batman. So maybe he doesn't think he's going to die from cancer. Maybe he thinks that, like, he's going to die anyway because he's going to get Batman to kill him or something. Huntress finds where Killer Croc is and begins fighting him in a massive fight underwater. And Killer Croc is like, look over there at what I've done. Ever since I ate Tim, I'm going to eat you. And Huntress looks over and she sees the remains of Tim. just a bunch of bones and whatever's left of his cape, which causes her to get really mad. So she shoots Killer Croc in the arm, and Croc decides to tie her up to some pipes at the bottom of the water, like underwater, so that she'll drown. And there's a really cool moment where Huntress rips her hands out of the rope, like causing her like wrists to bleed because she's like torn her wrists apart to get out. And then she grabs a pipe and she's just like, "You killed him, you animal!" And she just smashes the pipe over Croc's face, and then just beats him senseless with the pipe multiple times, knocking him out. And then she gets in contact with Babs, and she's like, "He's dead, Oracle." And Oracle's like, Croc, you killed him?" And she's like, "Not Croc, Robin. Robin is dead." And we're left with Barbara, a haunting look on her face, just like, shit. Tim's dead. Yeah. That's the end of Joker Last Laugh issue 5. Pretty good issue. I'm enjoying this event. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's better than like Genesis and stuff. Like, it's nothing crazy, but I think as an event all about the Joker taking over the universe, so far it's doing a pretty good job at doing that. So the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Robin issue 95, written by Chuck Dixon, with art by Jeff Parker. There's actually a moment in this where Jeff Parker forgets to draw a villain like the Joker. It's the Saz. He just appears normal. He forgot to give him like white skin and ruby lips because he's supposed to still be Jokerized. But other than that, everyone else is drawn still Jokerized and stuff. This issue takes place after the last issue of Joker's Last Laugh, which Tim Drake is thought to be dead because his remains were found in the Gotham sewers, alongside Killer Croc, like, and his cape. Like, there's a, skeleton with his cape. So, Batman wants to find the Joker and stop him, and the Joker is apparently going to have a final showdown in Cathedral Square. So he goes there with Spoiler and Huntress, and he sees that, like, all the authorities are being kept behind a barrier so that they can't stop the final battle that the Joker is planning. Nightwing has gone to confront the Joker. We don't see it yet, but he's gone to confront the Joker because he believes that the Joker has killed Tim Drake, and so he wants to get his revenge, and Nightwing is pretty much determined on killing the Joker at this point. Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, and Oracle are currently talking to one another about, like, Ted's just like, why don't we just tell the Joker that he's dying? And Oracle is like, it doesn't matter because he's going through with his plan regardless at this point. And that's when Tim shows up, and it's revealed, obviously, that Tim is still alive. And Tim explains to Ted and Barbara how he's still alive, because back when he was captured by Killer Croc, Croc did try to eat him, but Tim set off like a little gas canister, like a smoke pellet, which allowed him to get away from Croc, but Croc was able to still hit Tim hard enough that he fell into the waters, like the sewer waters, which is bad because the Killer, like, that's Croc's element. So Croc jumped in, chased after him, but Tim managed to get away through a sewer grate, like through the sewer grate, to escape from Killer Croc. But in the process, his cape was ripped off, which is why his cape was left behind. It turns out that the remains are of an unknown 30 to 40-year-old male. You don't find out whose remains they are in this. You probably have to keep reading Robin to find out the answer to that, which I'm not doing. But Tim escapes from Croc, finds Oracle and Blue Beetle, and Tim realizes that Nightwing thinks that he's dead, and so he's obviously gone off to find the Joker and kill him. So Tim wants to find Nightwing and stop him before he goes too far. And the issue ends on a little sneak peek at what's coming up, which is Nightwing fights the Joker, and like the final panel is him like punching Joker in the face. So we'll find out how that confrontation goes in Joker's Last Laugh issue 6. But that's a little bit away from here because we got a couple more tie-ins to go through before we get to that. So the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is JLA issue 59, written by Dixon and Beattie, with art by Daryl Banks and Way Foucher. If you're wondering why Batman just doesn't get the JLA to go and help him deal with the Joker, it's because they're actually busy. Dixon and Beattie came up with a reason why the Justice League can't go and help stop the Joker. It's because they're busy trying to keep an eye on all of the Jokerized villains that are being cured and keeping tabs on like which ones survive, which ones don't, and to also make sure that none of them escape, which I think is a pretty good reason for them not to be in the final confrontation and to have it be just Batman and the Bat family. They give in a couple of like different villains that have unfortunately passed away. Like Jack and Queen, who are members of the Royal Flash Gang, are confirmed to have died from the Joker toxin. One villain who is affected by the Joker toxin, who we haven't seen in a while, is Dr. Polaris. He was freed in the very first issue of Joker's Last Laugh, or the second one, by the Joker, because Joker had massive plans for him, and finally we're getting to see why he freed Dr. Polaris, because Dr. Polaris is so powerful with his magnetic abilities. He goes to the South Pole and becomes the South Pole itself by taking over its magnetic pull. When he goes there, he actually comes across these two scientists called Kath and Keith, and he just rips them apart. It's pretty horrific. Because he's infected by the Joker, he just picks them up and just goes, yeah, and just rips these two people to pieces. It's pretty awful. It's funny because a lot of this story heavily revolves around Dr. Polaris having multiple personalities. The name of the story is even called bipolar disorder because it's in the snow and bipolar is a thing. Even though bipolar doesn't necessarily mean multiple personalities, it just means, you know, very varying like emotions and it's different for everyone, you know. It's one of those things. Polaris doesn't have multiple personalities at this point in time. Dixon thinks he does, but Dixon also hasn't been reading Green Lantern because in Green Lantern, Dr. Polaris got rid of his other personality because he used to be two guys in the same body, but he got rid of the good guy and now he's just one personality. It's just him. Because he used to be him and his brother, but he got rid of his brother, and so now he's just evil. So Dixon just didn't read that and didn't know that, and so he's doing this story all about Polaris having multiple personalities even though he's not supposed to. And I wouldn't be surprised if it continued on where like other writers, because of this story, also thought Polaris still had his multiple personalities, so the whole story of him just going back to one evil personality is just completely swept under the rug because one person forgot. So yeah, he's taken over the South Pole, started affecting the magnetics in the South Pole, which is a problem that the JLA see when they see that the sky is real weird. So they head to the South Pole to try and deal with Polaris. Flash and Superman decide to run there because they're super fast. Batman, John, Diana, and Plastic Man all head to there in one of their jets. The jet isn't made mostly out of metal, but it still has metals within its ceramics, so Polaris is able to sense that they're coming, and he causes the jet to crash. Superman and Flash arrive. and Plastic Man was able to keep the Justice League members safe from the crash by morphing around them, but unfortunately, he can't deal very well with the cold, and he freezes in place, so Plastic Man is useless at the moment. Kyle wants to just attack Polaris head on, like he thinks that's just the best case of, that's the best case of action, because Polaris is so powerful, so they should just, like, go straight at him and just beat the crap out of him. And so they try to do that, and because they all have some level of metal within them, Polaris is able to just take them all down really easy. Like, John has more iron in his body than a human, so Polaris is able to, like, cause his blood to start pouring from his eyes. It's pretty messed up. Luckily, Wally, the only metal in his body that Polaris can control is his fillings, because his suit is made out of Speed Force, so he's able to at least whip up a windstorm that blasts the JLA members away from Polaris so that he can no longer affect them, and they have to come up with a new plan to defeat Polaris. Because they all have some level of metal in their body, they need help from someone who has no metal in their body. And that person is Plastic Man, because his suit is his body. He doesn't have any metal, he's just got his weird rubbery flesh. So they decide to help warm up Plastic Man. So Superman shoots his heat vision at the Aurora Borealis, like, they call it the Aurora Australis. It's like this barrier, the magnetic barrier that, like, magnetic field that Polaris has created. So Superman bounces his heat vision off of it, and then Kyle funnels the heat vision into, like, with a green construct, into Plastic Man, warming him up, and then Plastic Man easily beats Polaris. He just wraps around him, and Polaris can't do anything to him because he's not made out of metal. And then he pokes Polaris in the eyes, and that's how they beat him. And they're just like, what are we gonna do with him? And Batman's like, well, John will keep his mind locked down. You guys go back to deal with the Jokerized villains and look after them. I'm going to go off and confront the Joker. And so it ends with Batman going separate ways with the Justice League to track down the Joker and stop him once and for all. So it's kind of assumed that, like, after the Robin issue, he went off, he helped the Justice League, and then he went back and continued, dealing with the Joker. So the next tie-in we were going to cover was Batman issue 596, but I'm not going to cover most of it. I'll just talk about how it ties into Joker's Last Laugh, because much like that Wonder Woman tie-in, the Joker's Last Laugh part of the story doesn't really matter. It's written by Ed Brubaker with art by Scott McDaniel. Brubaker is still just continuing the, like, Zeiss storyline that he was doing in Our Worlds at War, and much like that tie-in, that takes prominence over the event plot. So there is a Jokerized villain in this. His name is Santa Claus. He was created specifically for the event and the story. He's just a German guy that dresses up like Santa and hunts down people who he deems to be naughty, no matter who they are. Even if it's children, he'll try and kill them. So Batman has to deal with him while dealing with Zeiss, but he chooses to deal with Zeiss for most of the issue because Zeiss is killing people who are members of mobs, so Batman has to track him down. And when he tracks him down, he comes into confrontation with Santa Claus, who happens to be there as well. And there's a sniper who tries to kill Zeiss and hits Klaus instead, but Klaus manages to survive, and Batman manages to save Zeiss from being murdered, and there's also some, like, children there at the time, because Klaus is trying to kill these children for being naughty, so Batman has to save them too, and it ends with Santa Claus being taken off in an ambulance, and he's no longer Jokerized, because being shot in the arm unjokerized him. And then Batman continues trying to track down and take down Zeiss, because Zeiss managed to get away. Yeah, that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about this, because that's all that's really worth talking about. I'm not here to talk about the ongoing story that's going on in Batman, like I'm here to talk about the event, and if the tie-in doesn't have much of the event in it, then I'm not going to talk about it very much. So we're going to move on to the next tie-in instead. So, the next tie-in we're talking about is Action Comics issue 784, written by Joe Kelly with art by Duncan Rouleau, and yeah. So before I started reading this issue, I was afraid to read it, because so far it's been a very low batting average for Joe Kelly's tie-ins that he's written. The Superboy ones were pretty much all atrocious, including the one for this event, but also the ones for Our Worlds at War was pretty bad. I don't know if it's just like Joe Kelly just doesn't give a crap about Superboy while writing it, and he just does whatever. This one is wacky, but it's also just as serious too. It's like Joe Kelly cares more about writing Superman than he does writing Superboy, because I'd say like 50% of this book is wacky as hell, but it makes sense because it's the Joker, and then the other 50% is actually dealing with pretty serious stuff that's currently going on in Clark Kent's life. We have him dealing with what's currently going on with Lois, and the fact that she's lost her dad, and that every time she sees Clark with his dad, it really, can be upsetting for her seeing that, which is understandable. The other part of this story is dealing with the fact that recently there was a little event called, a Superman event called Emperor Joker, where the Joker took over the entire universe using the power of Mr. Mxyzptlk. And during that event, he killed Batman over and over again to the point of breaking him. And Superman didn't want Batman to have to deal with all that pain that the Joker inflicted on him. So, with the help of the Spectre, he drew out all of those painful memories from Batman and brought them into himself. And now he's currently dealing with all this horrible stuff that's happened to Batman inside him. And throughout this comic, he has some pretty adverse reactions to Batman getting hurt, or almost getting hurt. And Batman is like, why are you reacting this way, Clark? Why are you being so overprotective of me? And then at the end of the book, Clark reveals to Batman what he's done, and Batman's just like, I am not going to thank you. I think it's stupid what you did, and I don't like the fact that you did that behind my back. The pain is mine to deal with. I know what kind of life I live. I'm used to pain, and I don't want you taking my pain and inflicting it on yourself just to try and make me feel better. So yeah, Batman does not take it well at all. He hates the fact that Superman did that, and it really comes from a place of Batman cares about Clark. Bruce doesn't want Clark to be inflicting that level of pain, especially his own pain, on himself, and to take those memories. Batman also just doesn't like the fact that Superman just, even though they're painful memories, he doesn't like the fact that Superman took all those memories regardless, and just stole them. So it's this very big confliction with Batman, where it's they were painful memories, but they were still his memories, and he doesn't like the fact that they were just taken from him. The Joker Last Laugh part of this story that it heavily focuses on, that none of the other tie-ins focused on, is in Joker's Last Laugh issue 4. Joker, at the very end, set off this rain that began turning some of the civilians Jokerized as well. This issue actually deals with that, which I really appreciate, where, there's civilians in Metropolis being affected by the Jokerized rain, and one person in particular who is affected by the rain, which is really interesting, is Kyle Rayner, aka Green Lantern. He is the villain of this story because he gets Jokerized by the new Joker rain. So the story involves Clark and Bruce having to team up against Kyle to try and stop him, because a Jokerized Kyle with a Green Lantern is extremely dangerous. So Jokerized Kyle tries to kill Superman and Bruce throughout the story they fight quite a lot. There's big confrontations between them. Kyle at one point makes a parallax joke where he becomes like Sokotoa Parallax, like Sokotoalax, and he like looks like Kyle as Parallax, which is funny because eventually Kyle would actually become Parallax for a brief period of time. I feel like almost every Green Lantern has become Parallax at some point now after all these years, so it's almost like a little bit foreboding of that. Eventually, Superman and Clark, and Batman, Superman and Clark are the same person. Superman and Batman discover that this Kyle Rayner that they're fighting isn't actually Kyle Rayner. It's a construct that he created. And I don't know if Joe Kelly knew it at the time, but in Green Lantern at this point in time, Judd Winnick was currently exploring Kyle Rayner's powers and how powerful he's getting, and the fact that he can create full duplicates of himself, easily, that have Green Lantern powers. So the fact Joe Kelly incorporated that into the story of him being a construct the whole time and yet still being extremely powerful is really interesting, and it goes to show that Joe Kelly was actually listening to and following what Judd Winnick was doing in Green Lantern. So I appreciate that. While I don't like his Superboy tie-ins, I'm glad that he's trying to keep things within continuity and within character. So yeah, they discovered that this Kyle is a construct, and that the real Kyle was Batman found the real Kyle. We don't know where he was. He was just somewhere in Metropolis hiding. Batman was able to find him. The real Kyle had actually passed out because of the Joker toxin, but they managed to cure him because Batman has the cure on him. So they inject him with the cure, they cure Kyle, and that's when Batman and Superman then have their confrontation about Superman stealing his memories and bringing them into himself, and their relationship kind of ends on a bit of a sour note. They've got to build bridges between each other again, and that's the whole issue. Like I said, first Joe Kelly tie-in I've read that I've actually really enjoyed. I thought it was pretty good, and I think it just goes to show that Joe Kelly actually cares about Superman and can tell serious stuff without it always just being a joke. There's a lot of wacky stuff in this, all the Kyle Green Lantern stuff is pretty wacky, but that makes sense because it's the Joker. But yeah, pretty good overall. If you are reading Joker's Last Laugh, I would say this is the only Joe Kelly tie-in you should read if you're reading the tie-ins. So, we've made it to the final tie-in before the final issue of Joker's Last Laugh, Titans issue 34, written by Jay Faerber with art by Peter Grau and Bud LaRosa. I've actually been reading Titans up until this point, so I know exactly what's going on within it. Things to know before this is that so Roy Harper and another character named Jade, aka Cheshire, had a daughter whose name is Leanne. In a previous story, Cheshire blew up an entire country, killing millions of people. So she's a wanted terrorist. That obviously caused complications between Roy and her, and for some reason Roy continued to be in love with her for ages. He was even dating Donna Troy at the time, and yet he was sending love letters to Cheshire and stuff, and kind of fawning over her. And eventually he came to his senses, and because Cheshire continuously tried to get Leanne back, her daughter, because she wanted to be with her, but obviously she's a terrorist, so Roy wants her to stay away from her. And this came down into a confrontation at the slab where Cheshire, attacked Roy for getting in the way of her and Leanne, and this caused Leanne to cry, and at that point Roy was like, "That's enough. You are never being a part of her life, ever, and I never want to see you again." So after all that, the Joker stuff has started. This is right after that, pretty much. So the Titans are dealing with Jokerized villains. They're currently accompanied by a new member whose name is Epsilon, who's just kind of this weird kind of there's a lot of mystery surrounding him and his identity. The Titans have also brought in a bunch of children with meta-human powers because they're all orphans, so they're currently staying at Titan's Tower because they have nowhere else to live. There's a big thing about family with the Titans series at this point in time, about them, adopting these children. Roy Harper and his child. Garth, aka Tempest, has a child at this point with Dolphin. One of these kids is named Zeke. He's actually pretty important in this story. There's also another child named Nika who is important in this issue too. Leanne wants to watch TV, but the boys are busy watching TV, so Dolphin comes in. Oh, not Dolphin. Wait, is it Dolphin? I think it's Rose Wilson, right? Yeah, Rose Wilson comes in. She looks a lot like Dolphin, because they're both women with white long hair. Rose comes in because she's kind of Leanne's babysitter, and she tells Leanne to come and play with Nikki, do some drawing with her to pass the time until Dolphin comes back with her son. Meanwhile, Roy is at Star Labs waiting for them to finish the cure for the Joker disease that's going around, so that he can then pass it on to the Titans so that they can start curing Joker Roy's villains. At this point in time, he takes the opportunity to mention that Cheshire was in the slab, but should have been moved to Blackgate before the venom started affecting villains. But it turns out that they didn't move her out of the slab fast enough, because Cheshire got affected by the Joker toxin, and she's already broken into Titan's Tower. She heads into one of the rooms where Zeke and the other boys are, and she attacks them, and they try to use their metahuman powers against her, but she manages to just beat the crap out of these children, and she actually scratches Zeke's arm, which poisons him because she's got poison claws. She's got poison in one set of claws on one hand, and then in her left hand, she has Joker toxin. So if she scratches you with that, she can Jokerize you. After taking them down, after taking out those children, she comes into conflict with Rose and another character whose name is Grace, who is another one of these children, and she just beats the crap out of Rose and Grace really easily, and heads off to find Leanne, who is playing with Nikki. And when she comes across Leanne, Nikki immediately knows that Cheshire is not a good person, and so she uses her telekinetic abilities to send Cheshire flying. And I might have said Leanne. I meant Cheshire. Cheshire is not a good person, so she uses her powers to throw Cheshire into a wall. And Cheshire just, throws a shuriken at Nikki, nicking the side of her head. And, scarring her face. And so Nikki passes out from being hit by a shuriken. Cheshire just, abusing all these children. It's really sad. So Leanne runs away from her Jokerized mother and is eventually cornered by Cheshire, and Cheshire scratches her face and transforms Leanne into a Jokerized Leanne. Roy gets a call about Jokerized Cheshire, and he immediately calls Donna Troy and Jesse, and they head off to the Titan's Tower to deal with Cheshire. Jessie finds Cheshire with Leanne, and she's like, "Get away from her!" and just smacks her. And she goes over to Leanne, and Donna is like, "Leanne, honey, are you okay?" And that's when it's revealed that she's been Jokerized. She's like, "Great Rhea!" And Jessie gets scratched on the back by Cheshire, which is bad because of her poison claws. And Donna fights Cheshire and tries to keep Leanne away from her, but Leanne bites her on the hand. So she's like, "Ah!" And Leanne's just like, "I want to be with my mummy." And she's like, "Leanne, you can't." And Cheshire's like, "See, isn't she adorable?" And as she, goes to grab Leanne and pick her up, Cheshire gets shot in the back by a tranquilizer, and it's Roy. Roy appears behind him, And he's just like, I told you last time, stay away from my daughter. And it's revealed that this tranquilizer is full of the cure for the Joker toxin, so it cures Cheshire. And then Roy's just like, Leanne, princess. And Leanne is like, no, daddy, no, I hate you. I hate you. And as like a tear like rolls down Roy's face, he shoots his own daughter with a tranquilizer. He shoots Leanne with a tranquilizer. Full of the cure to cure her. And they're just like, wow, like, he shot his own daughter? And it's like, well, he needed to get the antidote in her as soon as possible because she could have died from the Joker toxin. Especially because she's a kid, the Joker toxin might have killed her faster than an adult. So Jesse and Zeke are in hospital, recovering from the poison scratches. Jesse is talking to her mother, who she's currently in conflict with because her mother is dating a man that's like half her age. And Jesse is very conflicted about that. But her mother is just very worried about her, and she hopes that she's going to heal soon. And Roy is told by the doctor that Leanne is recovering really well from the toxin. And then he has a conversation with Donna about Leanne and what she said to him about how, she hates him. And Donna is like, she was just saying that. She was just under the influence of the Joker toxin. And Roy was like, but the Joker toxin, like, it brings out emotions that are already within you and multiplies them by 10. So it means that she probably feels that way on the inside. And I don't know how to feel about that. Like, what if she grows up resenting me for separating her and her mother? Like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And it's like, actually, Roy, you should have, because she's a terrorist, and I think you did good for Leanne by separating her from a terrorist. But anyway, Donna consoles Roy and is like, you're making too much of this. It was just a drug. That's all it was. I promise you, Roy. Tomorrow, everything will be back to normal. It ends with Leanne just smiling, happily sleeping. I truly believe that Leanne really does love Roy and that he is getting afraid over nothing. I'm sure there are parts of her that wish she could be with her mother, but also she knows that her mother is evil and that she's killed a lot of people, so she doesn't care that much. And so that's the final tie-in. So now we're going to be moving on to the final issue of Joker Last Laugh. So, the final issue of Joker's Last Laugh, issue 6. This one drawn by Mark Lipka and Dan Davis. And Rick Burchett. So, Joker has discovered that Tim died in the previous issue, and he's really annoyed because he wanted to be the one that killed Tim Drake. And Dick Grayson has discovered that Tim is dead, and now he wants to go and kill the Joker. Once I get through this issue and we have covered the ending of this event, I will actually go over the alternate ending to this as well, because there was another ending that Chuck and Beatty wanted to do, Dixon and Beatty, that they didn't get to do, so it'll be interesting to be able to talk about that for a bit. But yeah, the Joker's really annoyed that somebody else killed Tim, but then when he finds out that it was Killer Croc and that Killer Croc ate him, Joker starts laughing and is like, boy wonder ta-ta. I'm not sure I could have topped that one. Meanwhile, Dinah and Shiloh, who are currently in the slab, stuck in a black hole, are killing Mr. Multiple repeatedly until he has a power that will allow them to get out of the slab. And Mr. Multiple is just getting really upset at dying over and over again, and he's like trying to run away from them. He's like, they're like, we've only killed you a few times, and he's like, a few times? Try 36. Even when I resurrected with the power to feel all-consuming bliss for the first time in my miserable lives, you didn't stop. And then she's like, so can you create gravity wells? He's like, frankly, no. Teleport beams? He's like, I really sincerely wish. So then we'll shoot for 37. And she shoots him again. He's like, I'm going to hell for this. Dick enters the cathedral to confront the Joker. He gets teleported in by warp. The Joker has like a couple of villains in there to meet Dick. He's not talking. He's just walking in. And Batman's like, you're gonna have to stop him. Like, you gotta make him stop. But I don't know if we can. He seems determined. And the Joker is dressed up like Elvis Presley. He's just like, ladies and gentlemen, let's all give a big welcome to the first of the Boy Blunders, Robin, episode 1. Geez, Wingnut, you look like somebody died. Oh, that's right. You lost another little brother recently, didn't you? And then Nightwing just kicks the crap out of all of the villains. Like, all of a sudden, he just goes wham and, like, kicks Mammoth in the chest and sends, like, a bunch of other villains just flying. And so the Joker's like, stupid supervillains. Is that the best you have? Pummel him to death. No imagination, no flair. And so the Joker, like, pulls out a gun and starts shooting at Nightwing and all the villains and kind of hits a couple of villains while Nightwing dodges them. Meanwhile, all the police forces outside the cathedral can't do anything because there's a barrier that's stopping them from going in. The commissioner is like, hey, like, let's go after the Joker. Like, why aren't we going to the cathedral? And he just walks straight into the barrier and it's just like, ugh. It's like, what the hell was that? And it's like, yeah, there's a barrier, sir. Like, we're trying to tell you that. We can't actually go in there even if we want to. So the Joker is in like, now, where was I? Oh, the death of Wingding. The death of Wingding, the former boy hostage. And, meanwhile, they, like, Mr. Multiple tries to convince them not to kill him anymore, and eventually he gets through to them by telling them that he has the ability to, because they could kill him 1 trillion times, and he might not get the power that they're looking for because it's random. But he does have the ability to bring things back to life at the moment, like dead tissue. So he could bring Black Mass back to life, and then Black Mass might be able to get him out of the black hole. So they decide to do that. And when they do, Black Mass was still shot in the head, so his brain is still kaput. So, like, even though he's alive, he can't function properly. So they decide to put Mr. Mind inside Black Mass's head to take control of Black Mass. And to stop Mr. Mind from trying to escape, Shiloh ties a bit of, like, floss around Mr. Mind's neck so that he can yank him out of the ear. And he's like, either I yank him out or he gets cut in half if he tries to escape, you know? So that's the plan. Nightwing starts beating the crap out of the Joker. He, like, just punches him in the face. He's like, oh, out of bullets. That's okay. I know a better game. See, I was planning on having Batman kill me. Suicide by superhero, see? I'm dying anyway, right? So why not get a little blood on his cape in the process? But revenge once moved is sweeter. It's really put a twist in his Kevlar if one of his little did the dirty deed. Yeah, he's like, it would really put a twist in his Kevlar if one of his litter did the dirty deed. So you up for a little homicide, handsome? Or are you mad enough? Big and bad enough? So he's like taunting Nightwing to try and kill him. Like, he wants Dick to kill him. And so Dick just kicks him in the face. He's like, attaboy! Ugh. Batman, Huntress, and Spoiler arrive at the cathedral where they come in confrontation with a bunch of Jokerized villains. They have to fight them off. And Joker almost gets gets the upper hand on Nightwing. He, like, hits him in the stomach and then tries to, like, clobber him from above. But Nightwing just catches his fist and then just punches him in the face. Mr. Mind and Shiloh and Diana and Mr. Multiple manage to get out because, like, Mr. Mind takes over Black Mass's mind and then claps his hands, creating a black hole and getting them out of the black hole that they're in. And they end up in the South Pole. Because they thought they would end up where they originally were, but it turns out the slab is now in the South Pole. But luckily, the Justice League are currently in the South Pole, or at least Martian Manhunter is, because he's currently keeping an eye on Polaris, who has become the South Pole itself. So they're not actually able to move the slab from the South Pole. They have to keep it there because they need to keep Polaris in the slab and monitored. Because Polaris is the South Pole now, if they move him, it could turn the entire planet on its axis. So they have to keep him there and try and negate his abilities before they can move the slab, which annoys Lex Luthor because they need the slab, so they have to start bringing all the Jokerized villains to the slab in the South Pole instead. Nightwing. So Joker finally gets on Dick's nerves long enough when he mentions Jason. He's just like, ugh, I hit Jason a lot harder than that. His name was Jason, right? Should have videoed this. And then Dick just repeatedly punches Joker in the face. He's just like, doo, 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 doo. And then Tim shows up and he knocks out the last couple of Jokerized villains that are inside the cathedral. And Tim's just like, is that enough, Nightwing? And Dick's like, Robin? He's like, it's me. He's like, no, you're dead. It's a trick. And Tim's like, an illusion. Dick's like, an illusion, another sick joke. And then Tim grabs his arm and he's like, it's me, Nightwing, stop this. He's like, ugh. He's like, Nightwing. And Dick's just like, what have I done? Tim's like, oh my god, he's dead. And Dick's like, I killed him. So Dick has killed the Joker. He's punched him enough that he's completely killed him. And so Joker sees the light. He's in, he's going towards hell, I guess. He's like, oh, wow, this can't be right. And then he hears a voice. It's like, Joker, don't go into the light. And Joker's like, that you, God? I want my lawyer. And the voice is like, you're not dying. And he's like, says you. Like, you're not God. You're... And then he hears 3, 4, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15. And then it's Batman, and he's like, he's back. And so Batman has resuscitated the Joker. So the Joker did die for about 30 seconds, but Batman brought him back. Yeah, originally it was supposed to end with Dixon killing... not Dixon. Dixon was going to kill off the Joker, but Nightwing was supposed to kill the Joker, and he was going to stay dead. But obviously, Joker sells action figures and stuff, so they didn't let them kill him off. Rancor was supposed to take over. Rancor is the guy that's been hanging out with Joker for so long. He's supposed to take over after the Joker died, but he didn't die, so Rancor was swiftly forgotten after this. Even though the Joker is still alive, Dick is still racked with guilt because he did kill him, and while Tim tries to go after Dick, they're just like, no, leave him. Dick needs some time alone at the moment to deal with this. Because he's like, I was broken. He pushed me too far. I killed him, and I was happy that he was dead. I was actually happy. And so, yeah, the Joker is defeated. He's put back in the slab. He's isolated this time. He has no contact with any other inmates. They all want to kill him anyway, after everything that he's done. He has no cameras. There's no sound. He can't hear anyone. He can't see anyone. And Oracle says that this is because if he doesn't have an audience, then how does he get the last laugh? But then she's like, how does he get the last laugh? And there's a shot of her in her wheelchair, and it's kind of her thinking to herself I mean, he already did, at least on me, because I'm still paralyzed because of him. He still won in my eyes. And yeah, that's Joker's last laugh. Joker gets reincarcerated. Shiloh becomes the head of the slab and keeps an eye on Mr. Multiple. Mr. Multiple has to look after Mr. Mind while he's in prison. And the only camera in Joker's cell is the one that Oracle uses to watch him 24/7. And this time, she's going to make sure that she doesn't let up. But of course, as we know, the Joker will eventually escape again. Completely undermining this, but that's fine. Yeah, and that's Joker's Last Laugh, the event. Overall, this event isn't bad. I think it's pretty good. I had a lot of fun reading it. There's a couple of tie-ins in it that weren't very good. Most of them were good, though. I like this event a lot. I think it would have been a lot better if it was allowed to have the consequences that it was supposed to, which is characters dying and the Joker himself dying. The original ending to this was that Superman was going to be the one who killed the Joker. So the Joker was gonna kill Elongated Man, and he was gonna like Superman was gonna find his body stretched across the bridge, and it would have said like, "See what I'm capable of," like on his like etched on his body across the bridge, and that would have pushed Superman to the breaking point of killing the Joker, and that would have been one of the consequences, is that like one of Superman's biggest kills would have been the Joker, which is ironic because that would later become a thing in like the premise of Injustice would be that the Joker, like Superman would be pushed to a breaking point and would kill the Joker, and that's what would set him down a path of rage and stuff. That wouldn't have happened in this. Like Superman wouldn't have become like Injustice Superman, but he definitely would have dealt with like the guilt of killing the Joker, and that would have been like a new arc for Superman to go through. But obviously they weren't allowed to do that, and Dixon said he regretted it. He was like, I'm glad we didn't go with that, because that was a terrible idea. So we just went with Nightwing instead, because it makes a little more sense. But still, the Joker wasn't allowed to stay dead, but it still at least affects Dick, because he still killed him, even if he didn't stay dead. So he still has to deal with that. So it still has lasting effects on him. It's just unfortunate that the event didn't have the lasting effects that Dixon and Beatty were hoping. I would have been completely okay with the Joker dying in this, because for a long time now, I've always believed that the Joker should just be killed off and replaced by somebody else, because like he's so popular, but at the same time, it's time, you know? And there's been plenty of opportunities to actually do it, but no one has ever made it stick, and they never will. But I do think that is what they should do. They should kill the Joker, for real. I think they should do that. I was always a firm believer of, at least before Jason Todd was, you know, became more of a good guy in the comics as Red Hood. I was a firm believer of killing the Joker off and then having Jason kill the Joker and then him becoming Batman's arch nemesis. I always thought that's what they should have done. I think that would have been a much better choice than what they made. I know it's not a choice people would have liked, but I think it would have been interesting. But yeah, that's Joker's Last Laugh. Overall, I highly recommend reading this event. I think it's pretty good. It's not as good as like DC 1 Million and you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths and some of the other events that have come before this, but it's definitely better than like Genesis and Bloodlines and Eclipso, and DC had so many bad events during the 90s. This was a bit of a fresh air. This was also better than Our Worlds at War, I think. It might not have had the same, I think Our Worlds at War's best moments were better than this, but overall, as an entire event, this one was better. But yeah, that's it for this week, and next week, we're going to be moving on to more of Jeff Johns' Flash, continuing that run, and we're going to be doing that for a while, because it's going to be a while before we get to another event. There isn't another massive event after this until Identity Crisis, which was in 2004. So we've got 3 years worth of Flash comics to get through before we get to Identity Crisis. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week for more Flash. Have a good one. Oh, almost forgot. I actually have another song. I almost forgot about that. There's another song that I've made. This one is for Joker's Last Laugh, so as usual, putting it on the end of the event, at the end of the video, and yeah, hope you enjoy it. Just made this for fun.
In Gotham's night, where shadows creep, a twisted tale where secrets see. Clown Prince grins, the night's his stage, unleashing chaos, unlocking rage. Locked in chains, but now he's free. A dance of madness, wild and free. His laughter echoes a haunting tune beneath the pale, distorted moon. Joker's last laugh fills the air. Twisted rhythms, a mad affair. In the chaos, we lose our way. Dance with shadows till the break of day. He Through the haze we navigate, in the midst of fear and fate. From the ashes rebels spark in